Atheist musicians are playing in churches right now in your city and in churches all over the world, and most people don't even know about it. But in this video, I'm putting this whole situation on blast. I'm calling out names for where the problem really lies, and I'm telling you the truth about this whole entire thing. So churches have always generally been a little loose about the musicians that they allow to play in their churches. Like, for example, you could be whatever denomination, you could be Baptist or Catholic, and then, get a job at a Methodist or a CME church, or vice versa. Churches, for the most part, don't even care about that kind of stuff as long as you can play well. And to be honest, most of them kind of think if they hire you at their church, they can convert you to whatever their denomination is anyway. So it's never really been a huge problem. But it has never been the case that churches have allowed non-believer musicians or atheist musicians to play at their churches. That is, until now. And I tell you, we are in a new era. This is something that may actually become the norm much sooner than you think, and it's going to have a major impact on the church. Now, I'm going to answer the question of should atheist or non-believer musicians even be allowed to play in churches in a sec. But first, let me tell you how this situation came to be where all of these atheist musicians have been allowed to be musicians in church and no one even noticed it. So we've seen in recent years people like the lead singer of one of the most popular Christian groups on the planet, Hillsong, renounce his faith and no longer believe in Christianity and all of that kind of stuff. And there have been plenty of other prominent singers and musicians to do this. And this means that at least at some point while they were, singing and playing at church, that they started questioning their beliefs and they stopped believing, but they were still playing and singing at church. Like the singer in Hillsong that I just mentioned, admittedly was questioning his beliefs and, starting to come out of the faith while still on tour and singing with Hillsong. And you can bet your last dollar if these prominent musicians or big time singers and musicians have done that, then there are a lot of these lesser known musicians that are doing this right now at this moment. And some of them have crossed the threshold into straight atheism. And, they're just keeping their church jobs playing and singing at church because it pays the bill. And it's the truth that no one really wants to look at, but I'm going to tell you exactly why this is happening. So this is Peter Popoff, and you probably know him from his late night infomercials as a televangelist on TV selling things like miracle water. He's been a big time preacher since the 80s, and his claim to fame was that he was this renowned prophet that could tell people all of these intimate details about themselves that he was claiming to hear from God. And, people were just amazed by his abilities. It made everyone want to come to his church services and his revivals and his crusades that he was doing. But did you know that this dude was outed as a fraud in the 80s? Because as it turns out, this voice that he was claiming to hear from God was actually his wife feeding him information in an earpiece. Get this. His wife was in the back room reading off information to him in an earpiece that she had gotten from the victims, all of the people there at the church before the church started, as she would go around and ask people what their problems and ailments and all of this kind of stuff. And plus they would fill out like survey cards and, put their address on it and stuff like that. And despite all of this, his miracle water stuff is doing really well right now. And the kicker about this is that even though this information is widely available and lots of people know about it, the church is not doing anything about it. Now, I have another name to throw out to you. But right before I do, if you're getting value out of this video so far, do me a quick favor and hit the like button on this video. That really helps out with the YouTube algorithms and stuff like that, and it lets me know you appreciate this content. And also hit the subscribe button if you haven't subscribed already. Now, this is Pastor John Gray, and you may know his name. He's a prominent pastor that travels the world preaching and such, right? And for the longest time, he was one of the big names in churches and in ministry. Like, he had a regular standing at Lakewood Church, which is the largest church or either the second largest church in the US. But did you know that this dude got exposed not once, but twice for cheating on his wife. And there were rumors of a third time of it happening. All of this happening while he's preaching in pulpits that adultery is bad and it's a sin. And despite all this guy still has his own church, I believe in Atlanta, that still has a really big membership and a really big following, and he's still traveling the world preaching and such. And just like with the Peter Popoff situation, a lot of big name preachers and pastors and churches from around the world still supports him. And what is it that we hear from the church regarding this matter? Now, there are plenty of others I could name, from people like Bishop Eddie Long coercing little boys into sexual relationships to even the Catholic priests and all of that stuff molesting little boys. But you see where this is going, don't you? If the church overlooks this blatant stuff that's literally right in its face, then how hard is it for a non-believer or atheist musician to get a job at a church or, continue playing at a church while he's no longer believing, he or she is no longer believing, and it just be totally overlooked? And it's not like churches even have some sort of checks and balances system that can assess this kind of stuff. And it seems like most of them really don't even care anyway. Now, I mentioned that this is going to have a major impact on the church, and I'll tell you what that impact is. What's going to happen is what I call the great reveal, where it's going to come out one way or the other that these churches are allowing atheist or non-believer musicians to play there, and it's going to cause a big uproar that's going to result in a catastrophe that I don't think the church may recover from. Because the church is going to be put under a microscope and it's going to be put under fire about this situation of them having non-believer atheist musicians playing at their churches. And even if this were to happen tomorrow, by my guesstimations and by the people that I talk to that are musicians and all of that, it's about 40 to 50% of the musicians that are playing at churches that are in this non-believer atheist situation. So to save face, the church is going to have to fire or let go a lot of these musicians, and that's going to cause the music departments and the music ministries at these churches to be in a bit of turmoil. And because of that, people are even going to be skeptical of other musicians who probably do believe, who are secure in their faith and all of that kind of stuff, because they are a part of this whole situation. And with all of this, I ask you, what has historically been one of, if not the hugest draws to churches? The music, right? So as a result of all of that, you're going to get this sort of music department or music ministry meltdown. And then you couple that with the fact that people already have a lack of trust for a lot of these preachers and pastors and such because of the stuff that I mentioned earlier. We're headed for a bit of a tragedy. So should non-believer or atheist musicians be allowed to play at churches? Well, what I would say to that is that it's sort of already too late to ask that question, because they kind of already are playing in churches, as I've explained here in this video. I really think that the best thing to do right now is, and this may sound a little strange, but I really think the best thing to do is for churches to find some sort of way to embrace this situation, because at least that will allow the church to sort of be proactive when the peak of this whole meltdown thing happens. And who knows, maybe it'll find a way to coexist with that kind of, dynamic happening. Now, I mentioned earlier some of this crazy stuff that preachers and pastors are doing to make this whole entire situation worse. But check out what these preachers and pastors are doing to musicians in this video that's wreaking even more havoc on this situation.